Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast. Wow, do I have something special in store for you today. I just recently did, and for those of you that have been listening for a while, you may have heard an interview that I did with Stella. She's the positive psychologist. We talked about the science of happiness. It was an unbelievable event. Well, I contacted Stella because after that call, both of us were just vibrating, let's say. And I asked her, look, can we do this thing on a monthly type of basis? So what you're about to listen to, which I've actually broken out into 4 parts. We were on the phone for about an hour and 45 minutes. I ended up bringing my brother. And here's the funny part. Stella and my brother actually thought that we were just going to be talking about structure going forward. Like, how are we going to do these monthly calls? And instead, we dove right in. And when I say right in, I mean we covered topics from psychedelics and ayahuasca, which you'll hear about in part 1. I share something extremely personal that has just happened to me and something that I'm working with. Stella ended up sharing about the issues that she's been having with her husband and how that's been going. And Guy shared stories about him and his girlfriend. I mean, it was basically like a coaching session done by coaches through each other. If you ever wanted to hear the kind of conversations that Guy and I have, and now our long lost sister, quote unquote, Stella brought to the equation, you're about to be a fly on a wall to conversations that people will pay thousands of dollars an hour to hear. And you get to see it from a very personal standpoint. So you'll actually get to see how myself, my brother, and Stella actually go through the process of dealing with issues or things in our lives that aren't working at peak performance. We've never shared anything like this live before. There's probably some things in here that I should have cut out that probably shouldn't be let out in public. But listen, we all agreed and we said this was amazing, amazing content. Leave it as is. So for the next few podcasts, you're about to embark on an unreal journey with myself, my brother Guy, and Stella Grisant. So with that, enjoy, and please, please, please let us know. Just let us know how this landed for you and what value you've gotten from it, because it's something that we're really considering to do on an ongoing basis. You can just simply text us. Number is 201-815-4414. Again, 201-815-4414. Let us know how this has impacted your life. Without further ado, you are about to become a fly on the wall to one of the most amazing conversations I've ever been part of. So enjoy. Yeah, so it was just kind of like that realization of
our family's always there and expecting that.
Yeah, and I'm programmed so differently. Like we don't have that kind of like guilt trip expectation in my family, and
that's amazing.
We don't make it mean like if you don't show up to something, you don't love me.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah. So
I contacted Guy and I was like, dude, this and this happened and blah blah blah, and he goes, we're the weird ones, right? I was like, yeah, I guess we are, because we just didn't have that. We didn't have it growing up, this big family and expectations. And I think I totally get her side of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for them, it's like breathing. And for me, it's like asking me to lift 400 pounds over my head. It's so unnatural and so And I'm looking at it from the side. I'm going, this is crazy. Like that should be, I would love that to be the automatic reaction, but it's so not the automatic reaction.
Well, I mean, does she feel, or do they ever feel like it is out of obligation, or it's just automatic, happens with ease and love that they just show up for each other like that?
They just show up with ease and love. Like it is.
Yeah.
Put it to you this way. We had, I don't even know who she was to us. She's like, guy, who was Lala to us? Like, Monia's
our great aunt's mom.
Yeah, it's like so far, and she's not even our aunt. It's like whatever. It's like so far, but they're truly our only like actual family here, somewhat related to us. He's my grandma's brother. His wife's mom died, so whatever the heck that is, I don't even know how far removed that is. And we're like, but we knew her and whatever. So she had died. This was like 2 years back, and I was with Fanny, and for her reaction was like, get in touch with work, tell them I'm not coming in, like before I even asked. Like she wants to be there, right? My reaction, this is my family, like, do I have to go to the funeral?
That sounds awful.
But that's, you know, obviously I did, and like, but I'm saying her first reaction is, I'm gonna make this happen. My first reaction is like, do I really have to go? And I was like,
right,
fuck, man, what is wrong with me?
There's nothing wrong with you. I just think it's like you said, you guys have different ways of operating in your family and different ways of expressing love and showing up for each other.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. My husband also has a very small family, and I have a very big family, and we haven't come to anything like that. But it's interesting, and we talk about how, like, I really love the language that you use, that you don't do things out of obligation or guilt. That's really amazing that that's the way you guys operate. That is, especially for a Russian, Jewish, Israeli family, that is amazing.
That is uncommon.
It's very not norm. But it's kind of what I was saying to you before. It's literally all out of having been trained. My family did landmark, and
that's so good.
We always had a good open line of communication, but that just kind of gave us such a good base to learn and grow from. And, you know, we all did it probably about 10 years ago now. So it just
has Fanny done it?
Yeah, Fanny did it. Yeah.
So she also has that language of, you know, not putting meaning to stuff. And
for her, it's different. It's not like she sees what they do as this, like, they put a lot of weight on it. She gets it, and it's not the way she operates. But she, you know, from a very early age, they have a very big family, and it was like family first, no matter what. It like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You know, her uncle was in Florida. He flew down back for the funeral. Like and he was there on vacation, which they take one vacation a year, and he still came back. So it's just, that's the way they've been conditioned. So for them, it's not about guilt or this. It's just like, that's the way they operate.
Yeah, that's their value system, and
is amazing.
And family is on the top.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really interesting.
I mean, personally, I envy them. That's such a natural extension. I mean, whether they're doing it out of obligation or whether they're doing it out of love, you know, I'm sure people are on both sides of that fence. But I love, like, I always watch the movies, and it's like, yo, family first, you know, and like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, really, what else is important? Because when the chips are on the table, you know, all the other stuff melts in the background when things are going down. And if we were in that situation and it was our parent, obviously you want to have support around you and people show up and stuff like that.
Sure.
It's it could be both, like I could see her side where it's like a part of it is appeasing her family and it's coming from sincerity and it might be a little bit inauthentic and it's not what's really there for her. Another part of it is like, I'm here to support my family and it's not about me, and we had this conversation even last week, Ilan, right, with her family coming over and all this stuff came up for you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's really simple at the end of the day. It's like, you're either going to make it about yourself or you're going to make it about other people. Yeah. And anytime you make stuff about yourself, there's usually a lot of pain around it. And when you make it around other people, there seems to be like effortless movement. And we know that from even our business, right? Like when we're service oriented, it's like you're in flow, you're great. You almost don't even have to think about your own life. It just seems to be working. And then something like happens and you start looking directly at yourself all the time and you turn yourself into a sides project and everything goes to shit. So it's I can see it on both sides of the fence, but look, that's part of the agreement. You stick that ring on someone's finger and you need to get the hell out of the way when stuff like that happens.
Yeah. So that's been it was an interesting experience. It's been really, really on my mind.
So like triggered something for you, it sounds like.
Then we had a whole conversation about selflessness versus like being selfish, which I know for me, my barometer or pendulum, whatever, is definitely more towards the selfish side. And so through work and training and all that stuff, like it's always been this thing to like bring it back, where her parents specifically and her grandparents don't have their own lives. They're on the complete other end of that spectrum where they do everything for others. There's like no consideration of self. So I don't, there's definitely a balance. Like, I don't think that's healthy, but I don't think being a selfish prick is healthy, which is kind of what I was, I think, for a long time. So I think my tendency, like the knee jerk, is always to this side. So it's just interesting to hear the thoughts of like, so this woman died, this man died in my wife's family. And like, my reaction is like, how to get out of having to be there around that. I was like, what the fuck? It's like I was listening to this shit upstairs. I was like, wow.
I wouldn't judge yourself for it. I mean, I just take it as information. Like, I guess there's all sorts of different things that could be causing you to think that. It's like, one, death is just not an easy thing. Like, I lost family very early on when I was young, and I don't like going to funerals, and I don't like necessarily that whole thing. So, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that's coming up around it, but I guess it's like, maybe if you could find other ways to, or maybe one thing is like, how can I show up for her in a meaningful way? If that's not,
Something I can tell you, by the way, is this the interview?
Well, it's funny because I started recording it, but we didn't do an intro, and I was like, fuck, we went into like the meat and potatoes right away.
Are we doing an interview? Are we doing an interview?
I don't know, hang out, like
just a chat, I guess. Something I'll tell you that for me as a Virgo who is extremely attached to the way things are organized, right? So when I set up my day, if things come in, Ilan knows this really well about me, like if things come in that disrupt my day, it just creates upset in my life. Like it creates uneasiness right away. So what I've started to do is there's always the same feeling associated with that for me. It's not like a new feeling, right? So my barometer for it, if I let the mind play out, it always justifies the actions that I'm taking when I'm doing it. But if I associate with the feeling, I notice that the feeling comes before the mind kicks in. Like the feeling is there, and then I start explaining the feeling in my mind, right? And I think that's how it works with everything. It's like purchases, same thing as an emotional purchase, and then you justify it logically, whatever. So what I'm looking to do for me all the time is raise my awareness, because we spent so much time doing mind mastery type work. Ever since I come to California, I'm much more interested in body mastery type work. So now I'm looking for, all right, the feeling is there. Don't create the story, because that's what gets me in trouble. It's not that like I used to resist the feeling and I want to push it down, and then the story comes in and all it does is make it stronger. So now I'm like, all right, just feel the feeling, let it take its course, and I do my best not to add the meaning there so that I can just keep operating, because otherwise I can't operate.
Yeah.
That is so amazing. Yeah. That if we could all do that all the time, we would be
Right.
so much. Yeah, I think
that would be key. That would be key.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I was just reading someone's post about pain management, and I guess she's a pain management coach. And she talked about how if we can observe, I mean, it was about physical sensation, but it's the same thing about emotional sensation. Like you said, just to observe it without it meaning something, without it meaning something bad is happening or good is happening or whatever, but just to observe it and not assign meaning. That is
the body sensation.
Yeah. So she was writing, she's a pain management coach or therapist consultant. I don't know. I was just reading her post for something, and she was talking about how it's important just to observe the sensation, like, oh, there's tightness, there's swelling, there's this, instead of like, oh my God, like I'm, or you're so sick, or, you're in such pain. This is so horrible. You're not going to be able to do anything. Just to be like, okay, I'm just observing. These are the things that are happening. And when I had migraines in the first trimester, I'm pregnant, by the way, Guy, and I was having like these headaches that for like days, and I couldn't really take anything. And I didn't read this post then, but one of my friends reminded me to just, be observational. And then when you do, because so often we want to escape it, so we don't want to actually face it. But I was just like, I laid in my bed and I just faced it, and I zoned in on it. When you do meditation and you send your breath to different places. So I just sent my breath there, and I really did notice like an easing up, just to like come face to face with that point and not have it mean anything or be anything. But yeah, it was really powerful. And the same thing with emotions, if we can just like look at it instead of like trying to resist or whatever, or come up with stories or give in to that least action pathway. Yeah, I think that's really powerful.
There's also something that you said that triggered a thought for me, which is when we say stuff, it's always like, and I was just noticing even in the way that I was explaining to you guys my situation, you come at it from this like big thing. And so you talk about it like, say like failure. I'm a failure, right? Or like you experience something and you're like, oh, I'm the worst. I suck. I'm blah, 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 blah. But even I think on our first interview, it's all about looking at the micro things, like step by step, because if it's just this big ass thing that you say, there's no context. It's just this big weight.
Exactly.
So when you're talking about the body sensation, you can just say, I'm in pain, which is like, okay, great. That it's like if my kid said to me, I'm in pain, he's 3 years old. If he said I'm in pain, I'm like freaking out because I have no idea what's wrong. But if you're just like, okay, my chest hurts, that's like level, in. Then it's like, I feel tightness. That's that. And then you're kind of like narrowing it down to the actual sensation. And then you're not dealing with this big ass mountain. You're just dealing with that thing.
You're also usually not in pain. You're usually in some kind of discomfort. And even last week, right, when that stuff came up for you, what was the first thing I told you? I'm like, describe to me what you feel in your body versus trying to figure it out with your mind. Because you know the mind work and there's no impact. So when there's no impact with the mind work, it's because the story is so latched in right now to what's happening. You can't let go of the story. So it's already tied to the emotion. So the only other way to attack it is to find the discomfort in the body. Like you said, breathe into that area, right? Like then if you've ever practiced yoga, they always tell you like breathe into this part, breathe into that part. A lot of meditative practices like Ujjayi breath will do the same thing. But Stella, like I had a lot of experiences with ayahuasca last year.
Oh yeah.
Last 3 months of last year. And that's one of the things that, it's the ultimate letting go experience.
Totally.
The most spiritual experience I've ever had by far in my entire life. But what's so interesting is a lot of it is not comfortable. It's wildly uncomfortable at points in time. I mean, sometimes you're like facing your own death basically in that space. But if there's anything that it taught me, or I should say, and anything that it taught me, is that everything is temperamental. Everything. There's like, we have this, when something is occurring to us, it feels permanent. The pain feels permanent. Displeasure seems permanent. Unhappiness seems permanent. It always goes away. So if you look at your own experience, it's temperamental. But in that experience, it's like you're like basically in a state of massive flow for like 6 hours. So there's like this timelessness effect because of the DMT. And because of that, it's like you can be experiencing pain for a minute, but it seems like hours or sometimes months have gone by. And then, but it goes away and it flows. And then this like really beautiful experience will like come in and replace it. And then like suddenly you're faced with like really challenging things. And then there's like pain in the body, and then there's pleasure in the body and all these things. So I'm like, I was in the experience a few times. I'm like, wow, nothing sticks. Like nothing sticks except for the stuff that I focus on. And ever since then, it's like whatever's in my life, I have an ease about letting it go because I've taken responsibility for, if it's here, I'm inviting it to be here. I'm like letting it stay. It's like I've opened the door, said, come on in, and I don't have the balls to say, get the fuck out, basically.
Or it's there for a purpose, to serve you.
Yeah. Exactly. And everything teaches. Everything teaches. My worst experiences on ayahuasca were my best teachers by far. But the reemergence of plant medicine, even in Western culture right now, I think it's going to be one of the more pivotal transformations that we see around here. Like the reacceptance of plant medicine as actual study. Really interesting article that's floating around on Facebook right now is a shaman who had come over from the East to come see a mental hospital in the West. And his context for who these people are and what's really going on in there, and how these are what we look as people who are mentally ill are nothing more than people who are being as vessels from the spirit world to give us messages. Sure. And we're giving them drugs that are basically inhibiting them from completing the process that they're supposed to be going through. Really, really interesting. I'll see if I can find the article and send it to you guys. It's just fascinating because he's like, the psychotic part of this is that you guys are putting them all in the hospital and trying to cure them with something that you guys don't understand.
Right. I love that.
Super, super interesting. And that's kind of the same thing. So it's like what happens during an ayahuasca ceremony, I had no capacity for imagination as to what can actually happen when a group of people take that together, what happens in a room. I mean, like basically like a portal opens to like other dimensions when everyone takes it together. You experience yourself at the highest spiritual level. And like literally even now I've done it. I've taken the ceremony about 6 times, and I've probably taken the medicine about 10 to 12 times. And even now I can't imagine the experience. And that's what I'm always left with at the end of every experience is like, how unimaginable it was and how different it is every single time, to the point where the second time I took it, I actually asked the shaman, I'm like, did we take the same medicine? He's like, yeah. I'm like, because the experience was so different. And it's all based around the intention. So you kind of like write your intention before you get started. And your experience just completely aligns with whatever you ask for. So I'm convinced that if you go in there and you're like, I want to know what it would be like to, live under the sea. Like you would literally have an experience of living under the sea for 6 hours. And then come out of it knowing exactly what that would be like. So it's super interesting. I mean, I had one of my most beautiful experiences there. We had a grandfather who died in 2005, who I think for us is probably like the dearest relationship that we had. And he came to me and an ayahuasca ceremony, and him and I had a conversation like you and I would be having a conversation like across from each other for hours. And he told me stuff that I couldn't have possibly known on my own. Like it could have only come from source. It was just mind blowing and very peaceful. And he told me things that like I needed to know. Really, really incredible. So it's like, anyway, I don't want to have.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Last thing, have you guys seen DMT, the Spirit Molecule documentary?
I know. People keep talking to me about it.
It gives great language to the experience. I thought it was actually really powerful. And it also sounded like, I've never done that obviously, but I've had glimpses of, I could understand the framework that they were talking about. It was very cool. So it's on Netflix. It's a great thing to.
It's on the Joe Rogan one, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah. I met a shaman 3 weeks ago, and I had an opportunity to take MEO5 out here, which is like, there's like different versions of DMT. I think it's the lighter one, the more fun one. But yeah, DMT is like ayahuasca is just being like shot out of a cannon. From what I understand, like it's like life altering because it's only about a 10-minute long experience. It's like 5 to 10 minutes long, but for you it could be like decades as a conception, basically.
Right.
And people just say your whole identity and ego dissolves, and then you're just there like facing yourself. And it could be, I've heard some very interesting experiences. People in SoCal are into so many different things the rest of the country is not experiencing. So the amount of conversation around these things and how it's opening people's eyes, and plant medicine in general, all kinds, is there's a huge movement out here. Hopefully the NSA is not listening right now because they're going to come down here in hordes.
There's a post on YouTube and people are going to be like,
are we sharing this conversation?
I don't see anything that's wrong with it, honestly. Like I don't have fear around it because it's I don't think governments like mind expansion. They want drones, unfortunately, but it's just another slice at it, right? It's like if you can go and study meditation practices and have insights, and it'll probably take you 20 or 30 years, or you could take plant medicine and in 6 hours have the same insights. So we're all looking for the cheat sheet these days. I think it's, even if you can't have it forever, having that insight is like getting unplugged for a second in the matrix, and just being able to see that you're plugged in is, and having something to seek towards that you didn't even know was there is important, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yes. It was interesting. Joe Rogan did a podcast about this, and he brought on this chick who was I think she was a journalist for CNN, and she had been on this show like a year and a half before, and he was just like, he was talking about psychedelics and ayahuasca and all that kind of stuff, and she had never done anything. And a year and a half or 2 years later, whatever, so she ended up leaving the show, hitting just like a whole other level of depression. Joe Rogan's voice is in her head about like ayahuasca, healing, medicine, blah, blah, blah. Books a trip, flies out to Peru, has no idea what anything is. Literally like just was in her car, grabbed whatever she needed, just like got on this plane, had no idea where she was going, gets there, has a completely life-altering experience. Basically she was really, really anxiously like nervous, and she said the first thing she saw was a brick wall with anxiety in big red letters right in front, and she literally like in her vision like smashed through this wall.
Awesome.
And came out the other side just completely transformed. And then he brought her back, and she'd been on this like crusade around all these different people, like taking, mushrooms and DMT and all these stuff, like actually learning through ceremonies about these processes, and now makes it her mission to basically demystify all the shit that we've been told about psychedelic drugs growing up, and how like all the public service announcements with like, this is your brain on drugs. Remember when we all grew up?
Yeah.
And how all these studies are just completely disproving that all this bullshit that the government was just like trying to protect us with and all that stuff is completely false, and how people that have done extensive amounts of ayahuasca actually have raised serotonin levels and like raised activity in the brain, and like all this stuff where like ecstasy is putting holes in your brain. Like it was all just made up. There's like no actual studies that show this stuff. So it was really interesting to hear her whole kind of like personal journey experience, and how she's, the journalist is still inside her. So she's like now tooting this new horn. It was kind of cool.
I think that if I remember correctly from the documentary, how they explained DMT is that it's a naturally occurring, it's a molecule that exists throughout nature, it's a ubiquitous molecule that's everywhere, in plants, in our bodies, everywhere. And that what happens is that we metabolize it really quickly. So I might not be getting this right, but the thing that I took away from it was that we all have access, right, to being, we're all in a way unplugged in the matrix.
Yeah.
But it's that fast metabolization that we are in, that gives us our sense of perceived reality, which is this, I'm sitting here on a hard chair and I'm in this room and, I have a gray shirt on, but yet there's this whole other reality that we're not always seeing, because I think it's just a function of keeping us alive and on earth, like just keeping us in a certain, and it's very functional. But if there's a way to like dance in between the two more often, or just to remind yourself that there's more than like what we are seeing with our eyes. But it's like, my takeaway was that, like, we're metabolizing this kind of divine molecule, because otherwise, would we even be able to exist and function on this level in this dimension? So it was very interesting. You guys have to watch it because it gave great language for stuff.
Definitely will.
Hold on. I'm sorry. The chemical is naturally occurring in the body. All DMT is just releases what releases during REM. You're just consciously awake while it's happening. So it's the same thing you would experience. They say that you experience it during REM, during birth, and during death. And I remember even during an Aya experience, like at some point I was sitting there and it was just like so beautiful, right? This experience is unbelievable. And I'm laying there and I'm thinking to myself, so this is what happens when you die. And I'm like, and if this is what happens when you die, then there's no fear around death, because it just shows you what you need to see. And it's like walking with spirit. It's the best way I can explain it. It's like 6 hours of putting holding like spirit, like walking with like the great grandmother in your hand, and just like being able to experience the world where, with psychedelics, that you could feel that there's like a chemical reaction in the body. I think with Aya, what it feels like, it's like you have a knob that's like a frequency knob. And the reason we're in this reality is we're just vibrating a specific frequency. So we see what we see at this frequency. Right. Where with Aya, you feel like you have your hand on the knob and you can be like, boop, 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 and then and then experience the same reality, but at a different frequency. So it's like in a moment you can be just from this to like, literally the world looks like a Salvador Dali painting and you're actually like living inside of it with your eyes open. I mean, like literally, like I've had moments where what I see is so unreal to me. It's so dreamlike that I'm like, my eyes can't possibly be open. And I have to like check and be like, no, they're open. Like I'm actually experiencing this. This is insane. But it's amazing because you have extreme clarity of thought. There's no cloudiness. Like with alcohol or with anything else that you take, there's always that cloudiness. Like it's not really, here it's like you're having an experience, but you're totally you at the same time. So you remember it with vivid clarity, everything, the entire experience. It's super, it's just incredible. It's one of those things, if everybody did it, it would definitely change the world.
So let me springboard off of this into a different topic for us. So I think we all are in the space of training people, coaching people, and I think while there's definitely avenues to be gained, I think our job, like what we've committed our lives to, is actually unplugging people and giving them a complete different sense of reality. And I know, Stella, people come to you with certain inhibiting thoughts or beliefs or things that kind of like constrain them. And it's, like we've made it our missions to basically wake them up and show them like, hey, guys, there's this whole other life that you just have your eyes closed from. So if people are going to be taking, ayahuasca and DMT and psychedelics, obviously there's still ways to tap into that world. It might not be like, IV of spirituality into the brain at an instant, but there's a process that we go through. So let's talk a little bit about, what I shared with you guys earlier about let's just use me as an example. So my issue with the whole, like the way I operate.
Can you just hold your thought for like 1 second? I think, but here's for me the thing, because as a teacher, I feel like it's my responsibility. I think it's like my responsibility to be the person that goes to split test that stuff, because I can't teach unless I've garnered perspective that's outside what your average person has already experienced.
Sure.
So like, I feel like I have an obligation to be the person that's like the guinea pig a lot of the times, because I'm like, it's the only way I could see growing. It's like, otherwise I keep going and have the same experience over and over again. It just allows for me to become a better teacher. So that's all I want to say. I didn't want to give anybody the impression that it's like I'm advocating drug use or anything like that. I'm advocating perspective use, gaining different perspectives.
Yeah.
And that's where, as a teacher, I almost feel obligated that it's my job to go be the first one that does things like that.
So in the same vein, like you can do this obviously through that methodology, but let's just do an example, real world right here on the court so people can actually see this. Cause this is like something that I do with Guy, and I'm just really grateful that Stella's here, cause I'm sure it'll give us a whole different perspective. Talk about a handful, huh? When did you ever think you'd be listening to a bunch of people talk about ayahuasca and DMT and Ilan airing his dirty laundry in public? I mean, pretty wild things right here. I'm going to leave it off right here and end part one here. We're about to transition or pivot pretty heavily. And what I'm about to share in part two is really one of the most personal things I've dealt with in a long, long time. I really use this opportunity to get coaching from both Stella and my brother. This was honestly not really supposed to make it out. So, but it is. I think the conversation is just amazing. I got so much value in it from my life, and I'm sure you can hear yourself in it as well. So make sure you catch part 2, 3, and 4 of this incredible conversation. And with that, hope you have an amazing, amazing day. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed this or any of the other podcasts, please let us know. You can reach out to us just by texting us or calling us at 201-815-4414. And the best way to help us get the word out about how good this podcast is to head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a comment. That's how iTunes know that this is a really worthwhile podcast, and that's how we get the message out. So till then, have an amazing, amazing day, everyone. We'll talk real soon.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to SatoriPrime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.